The alien thought in his mind was a lodestone. It pulled him away from the mundane world and into the digital shadows. He found them on obscure forums, in the comments sections of articles about quantum physics and mass hysteria. People describing glitches, time slips, Mandela effects. Most were confused, seeking validation. A few, like him, spoke with the chilling specificity of true witnesses. They called themselves echoes or ghost drifters. They traded theories about parallel worlds and simulation errors. But none had received a message from the other side. They thought the cracks were breaks. Leo now knew they were sutures. Among the myths these communities whispered about was the Tinker. Not a name, a title. A figure who supposedly could not only see the fractures but interact with them. Who claimed to know their purpose. Most dismissed him as a legend, a story the desperate tell themselves. Leo, with the foreign words etched in his mind, had no such luxury. The trail was thin. A deleted Reddit post mentioning an antique shop in a dying coastal town. A reference in a decades-old paranormal zine to a mender of broken moments. He followed the crumbs. They led him to Grey Haven, a place where the rain seemed perpetual and the sea air smelled of rust and forgotten things. The shop was called Chronos Unbound. It was cluttered with the usual detritus of such places. But as Leo's perception adjusted, he saw the inventory for what it truly was. A music box that played a tune he remembered from a dream he never had. A mirror that reflected a room slightly to the left of the one he stood in. A clock whose face showed not hours, but shifting, nebulous images of possible futures. These were not antiques. They were objects caught in permanent, low-grade fractures. Relics of discarded timelines. The old man emerged from a back room. He was slight, with hands stained with old ink and something that shimmered like oil on water. His eyes were the color of a winter sky, and they saw Leo immediately, completely. "You're the one who's been poking the stitches," he said, his voice dry as old paper. No greeting. Just an indictment. "You're the Tinker," Leo said, feeling both relief and profound dread. "A name. It'll do." "You've been asking the wrong question, Leo Kessler. You ask what causes the cracks. The real question is what caused the world that needed cracking." The Tinker led him to a cluttered back room. There was no chair offered. "Sit on the floor. It's stable here. I made sure." He gestured to a complex diagram chalked on the old wood. It wasn't a timeline. It was a knot. A snarled, chaotic tangle of lines labeled with words like causality splinter, probability burst, narrative collapse. "You think a sad event, a trauma, makes a crack," the Tinker said, tapping the center of the knot. "It's the opposite. The crack is there because something much, much worse was prevented. The trauma you sense, the pain, that's the scar tissue. That's the world's memory of the wound that almost was. Your financial district. The despair you researched? That wasn't the cause of the big fracture. That was the alternative. That was the better outcome." Leo felt the world tilt. What could be worse than that? The Tinker's face grew grim. The original event. The one that almost happened. In that timeline, the fraud wasn't discovered. It grew. It became a global parasite. It didn't just ruin thousands. It collapsed governments. Triggered wars. Famine. A downward spiral that, he paused, choosing his words. That threatened the integrity of the causal chain itself. Time wasn't just flowing to a bad future. It was unspooling. Tearing at the seams. And someone stopped it. Something, the Tinker corrected. Not a someone. A force. A function. You can call it the Mend. When causality is about to rupture beyond recovery, the Mend intervenes. It finds the weakest point in the knot, the moment of highest probabilistic flexibility, and it makes a cut. It severs the cancerous timeline. It walls it off behind a fracture. What remains, our world, is the healed version. The one where the fraud was caught early, where only thousands suffered instead of millions. The pain you feel at that sight is the phantom limb of the amputated catastrophe. Leo's mind reeled. The fractures were triage wounds. Reality was a patient, and the Mend was a cosmic surgeon, cutting away necrotic futures to save the whole. Then the homeless man. The bench. The coffee cup. Microfractures. Tiny mends. A personal tragedy averted. A car crash that didn't happen. A heart attack that was prevented. The pain you sense is the echo of the worse self that person didn't have to become. The fracture is the seal over their aborted doom. And people like us, who see them. A side effect, the tinker said, his voice heavy. A flaw in the perceptual smoothing algorithm of the Mend. A tiny fraction of minds retain sensitivity to the suture points. Usually, it's harmless. We see the scars, we feel the ghost pain, we go a little mad. We stay quiet. But you, he fixed Leo with a piercing stare. You're different. You're not just sensitive. You're resonant. Your attention, your focus on the fractures, it doesn't just observe them. It vibrates them. It reminds the walled-off things on the other side that they exist. You are shining a light under the door. And they are stirring. The alien thought. Why are you trying to open it again? I didn't mean to, Leo whispered, horror dawning. Intent is irrelevant to a starving thing pressed against a barrier, the tinker said. You are a key, Kessler. Not because you can turn the lock. But because your very presence makes the lock remember it is a lock. And now, the things in the sealed rooms, they remember there is a door. The tinker explained his role. He was a maintainer. When fractures grew unstable, when the echoes bled through too strongly, he would perform small, localized acts of reinforcement. A ritual here, a placement of one of his objects there. He was a humble handyman for reality's plumbing, stopping small leaks before they became floods. What happens if a fracture fails? Leo asked, dreading the answer. The Mend is not perfect. It's emergency surgery. Sometimes, the walled-off infection reintegrates. A piece of the cancelled timeline bleeds back into the primary one. It creates paradoxes. Contradictions. People remember things that never happened. Objects exist in two states at once. If it's small, the world's inertia can absorb it. A few more confused souls. A new urban legend. If it's large, the tinker trailed off, looking at his intricate, terrible diagram. It's called a cascading reality failure. A crack spreads, breaks neighboring seals. Cancelled futures flood back in, competing with this one. The consensus of what is, now, shatters. The result isn't a new timeline. It's a nonsensical, painful collage of all the worst moments that ever almost were. A hell of broken possibilities. Leo left Greyhaven weighted with a terrible knowledge. He was not a canary. He was a bell, and his ringing was agitating sleeping monsters. The tinker's final warning followed him home. Stop looking. Stop seeking. Let the scars heal. Your curiosity is a chisel. But it was too late. That night, the fractures in the city changed. They no longer flickered passively. They pulsed. A slow, rhythmic throb, like a heartbeat. And with each pulse, the alien thoughts became clearer, more numerous. Not just one voice. A chorus of whispers from behind 1,000 sealed doors. Hungry. Angry. Lost. And now, awake. They were not asking questions anymore. They were making promises. We remember the door. We remember the light. We are coming to thank you for showing us the way. This concludes part 2 of the Shattered Present. The locks are trembling. The things behind them are learning to knock. And Leo holds the attention that taught them how.